So we know that a good strategy game should incorporate some elements that cannot be controlled or predicted, so that there is a fair amount of uncertainty. We know that roulette and IKEAs, and precisely their shortage of uncertainty, is what basically makes you bored after a little bit of time playing them. But the question becomes, what is the right amount of uncertainty to inject in a game so that it becomes fun and interesting? And what are the ways that this uncertainty can be injected in the first place inside of these games? Well, I like to think about two dimensions to think whether a game is good or not. I like to think about how long does it take for the player to beat a weaker opponent. For instance, at poker, there is quite a bit of uncertainty, so over a short period of time, a professional, experienced player might take quite a bit of time to beat a weaker opponent. It's going to become clear over the long term that the player has more experience because of the law of large numbers. So how long does it take to beat a weaker player? We want to make sure that you have the strong players beat the weaker player within a reasonable amount of within a reasonable time frame, and that's going to be a direct indication of whether there is too much or too little uncertainty. If you play chess, for instance, a top player is always going to beat a weaker opponent within one game. So that's an argument for chess having too little uncertainty embedded in the game. And then the second dimension, the second dimension that I like to think about is through which mechanism does the uncertainty manifest itself precisely. And we're going to focus precisely on that part right now. I argue that the best way to have uncertainty embedded or manifesting in a game is through incomplete or asymmetric information, through compounding bias, and through a continuous stream of randomness. Randomness basically progressively arising and progressively growing in the game. First, the most fundamental source of uncertainty comes from blatantly hiding part of the information to the players. And this is exactly what poker achieves by giving two cards that only you can see and that nobody else can see. And what the game of poker successfully manages to achieve is making players have to adjust a range of possibilities based on how the game is unfolding. And this is exactly what incomplete information settings allows you to do. You're never going to be sure exactly what the player that you're playing against holds in their hand. You're just going to be able to refine and to narrow the range of possible outcomes, of possible cards that they have. And that's going to be inferred or deduced throughout the game by actually, seeing what actions they take. The continuous stream of randomness at poker is also well exemplified by seeing each card, first the flop, then the turn, and then finally the river, each card just being progressively rolled out. And each card that comes on the board has the potential effect to dramatically change the outcome of the game, right? This is exactly what happens when somebody has a few red cards in their hand and is waiting for a heart to complete their color. They're just betting on the fact that they're going to see the game fundamentally changed in terms of outcome by seeing a heart appear. And so this is what this continuous stream of randomness is achieving. It allows you to make interesting bets and to see the game completely change within a small amount of time. Overall, when these design principles are well calibrated and well integrated in the game, this is exactly how you achieve this situation where a small amateur player can go head to head against an experienced monster of the game and over a short period of time be sure to win sometimes some hands, but over a longer period of time have to rely on gaining experience and accumulating skills to overtake them. There is just no way around good skills to actually play and benefit from poker over the long term. When you start playing these games, you will realize that a good card player never focuses on the outcome. Ask any poker player who suffered a bad beat, basically having lost a hand when he had a mathematical edge against his opponent. And what this player is always going to be thinking about is something along these lines. I'm happy with my check raised, although maybe I should have raised, a little bit more, maybe a higher pot size. But they're never gonna blame the queen that appears on the river and that basically, helped their opponent win on the last hand, even though it wasn't supposed to be happening. It was an outcome that they always considered as the hand unfolds, and they were mentally prepared to accept it. This comes from years of disciplined, probabilistic thinking. The greatest strategy games force you to practice it every day. They make you adjust your prior belief with new evidence, and they make you factoring the black swan events, the events that people are not used to think about, but they make you explicitly discount the strength of your hand and the strength of your position by factoring these events. And they help you recognize situation of weakness when your opponent has an informational edge on you. You will make mistakes and things will go wrong in many situations. But learning to deal with these mistakes is as important as trying to avoid them in the first place. And this is such an important point that I just want to emphasize it again. In too many aspects of your life, your work, your relationships, your interactions with other people, you very often focus on trying to avoid mistakes. Nothing prepares you to deal with these mistakes. And that's where strategic games come into the picture. You never really have to stop making mistakes. You just have to learn to minimize the amount of mistakes that you do in terms of the impact that it has on you, and to basically overcome them and move forward when you do make these mistakes. So probabilistic thinking is the key to adopting a stoic attitude and living a long, regret-free life. I hope that you're going to embark on this journey towards playing strategy games, and I will do my best to try to inspire you and to assist you in the journey. So I hope you're going to enjoy this series, and don't hesitate to reach out if you want to discuss any of these games at any point of time. See you soon.